Oh, wow. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff, you guys, the last couple of days. So right now I'm just kind of playing with formulas and numbers and trying to figure out how to create expressions. And so I'm still doing that. But I really need to cement this thought process because the words of the English language can have a direct meaning as just a standalone definition. And then words can have implications. This is why the English language is so difficult for some people, because people will actually take it literally for face value. They won't really put two and two together. They won't know how to bring in other factors. Some people would actually take words literally, which I don't blame them, because if you don't really have a background in some of these words, you're going to take it for face value and make A plus B equals C. And that is kind of like the very simplistic thought process out there. That's based upon 8th grade education. That's the reading level and the comprehension level of most of society out there, which is why you see so much ignorance and why somebody that has a very abstract way of thinking is going to seem really crazy to some people. Because I just discovered this now, but I had to take my A plus B equals C mentality, where you take things for face value, and adopt it for a while. Just like saying, oh yeah, vaccines cause autism. That's an A plus B equals C, correlation equals causation type of thought process. That is part of the simplistic way society processes information. Okay? Now you got to get into some more abstract, more complicated, circuitous, complex thought processes that, my God, can be very difficult, even for me. But I finally figured this out because it took me understanding the elemental composition of the human body. Okay, it took me understanding trace minerals. It took me understanding how or why people get affected or not affected based upon what they bring to the table. And so what could be good for somebody could be evil for somebody else. And this is the thing that we live in our society. We live in our society based upon good and evil, Democrat, Republican, antibiotic, probiotic. And there's all these meanings placed behind good and evil, antibiotic, probiotic, Democrat, and Republican. And it's a very simplistic way to draw conclusions of, and have a conclusion about someone or something. And now we have to, now understanding probiotic and antibiotic. Okay, so we're going to look at for face value right now. What's antibiotic? Anti-life. Well, what is anti-life, right? Okay, what is probiotic? Pro-life. Well, what is pro-life? Well, let's break down probiotic. Pro-life, okay, well, we all know kind of politically what pro-life is. Everything, you want everything to live. There's religious connotation, political connotations, all of that. But how that translates in the science world is it is a bacteria. It is a live bacteria. Probiotics is talking about bacteria. Now, what you do with them and why they're used and how they fit in the bigger picture is a totally different animal. But just the word probiotic is bacteria. Now, some will actually describe it as a good bacteria. Well, what is good? Good is another type of adjective that's based upon a perception, based upon a specific intention. Okay. So you could take a probiotic, which they deem as a good bacteria, and apply so much of it to somebody's body that it causes an imbalance. It causes an imbalance where you have too much lactic acid. When you have too much lactic acid in the body, then it causes an imbalance, goes down a trajectory, then pestilence gets attracted to you. Too much lactic acid causes cramps in runners. Okay? When you pair a probiotic with sugar, yogurt, and vinegar, that chemical process actually is detrimental. It would have an antibiotic effect, even though it's a probiotic. And I'll go into the whole antibiotic thing in a minute. So probiotic just by itself, which we are now learning, is not good on an overabundant basis. Okay? So we understand what probiotic, it says pro-life, but just because you're applying all of these good gut bacteria to your body, it could still throw the balance off your body because of what it's paired with and what it's being used for. When you're taking probiotic strains that they're doing in the allopathic world, where they are now curing certain diseases with probiotic strains. Well, you haven't got to the root cause. Yes, you may cure a disease, but that's one of hundreds and hundreds of diseases a person has. Then you have to keep applying this probiotic strain to give you some temporary stay of execution. And then a person then thinks, oh, I got to take these probiotic supplements, pills, and shakes, and they take an over amount of it, and then it causes an imbalance, and they have other issues. Because we found out that too much lactic acid, which is a byproduct of lactobacillus strains, is a probiotic. It actually attracts pestilence, and it's also part of the rigor mortis process. It's that chemical that gets released that stiffens up the muscles when a person who's dead experiences rigor mortis. So that's why then when people get cramps, that's a stiffening of the muscles when you're running a lot, because you're producing a lot of lactic acid. And then what do they tell you? Then go take some electrolytes to go and break up that lactic acid, okay? So you understand that just because it's a probiotic doesn't mean that it's good. It's just the word. Then you have antibiotic. And this is where it gets really confusing for some, because the irony just doesn't escape me. You can have an antibiotic quality using a probiotic. Okay? What does that mean? What is antibiotic? Well, we have characterized, which we had to, because I had to understand that we have a lot of people who are over-mineralized or have so many imbalances in their system and many mutations and issues in their systems that when they take large amounts of minerals, that they have no idea how to really consciously dose themselves. They have it, I mean, their doctors and the naturopathics will give them an idea, but when you try to control a process that the body needs to be the one to control, you actually throw the balance off the body. So when you're taking turmeric and honey and what else? Garlic and zeolite and colloidal silver. Now, in trace amounts, those are great. Those are part of the elemental composition of the human body. Those are trace minerals. But when you apply the body with so much of it because you're trying to manage a disease or cancer or inflammation or pain, now when they call it antibiotic, because it's not really anti-life, because you need trace minerals. They're not really poisonous, but it's the intention of the implication that you're actually using it to stop a healing process. When you're trying to mitigate inflammation or pain, you're actually taking a large amount of minerals or even probiotics too, okay? And then you're trying to stop the programming. You're trying to stop the healing programming, though you don't characterize this pain as healing, because that's not how they characterize pain in the allopathic holistic. So what do? They prescribe to you, or your friends in the holistic world recommend to you, oh, take colloidal silver or take garlic and apply these minerals to your body to interrupt the healing programming. So then it's called an antibiotic because of the intent of the usage. You see mothers who are giving elderberry syrup and honey to their kids, not just like, in a dessert where they just have a dessert and great, whatever. No, when their kid gets sick and they don't want to take some over-the-counter prescription drug, what do? They take an antibiotic. And what would make it an antibiotic? Because you're taking large amounts of something for a specific purpose, to interrupt the symptom program, the healing process. You're trying to dry up mucus, which is the body's way of releasing excess pathogens and virus information. And so you're trying to interrupt the healing process because you don't want your kid or you or anybody in your family to experience the healing, which is pain and inflammation and all that. Okay? So the irony of all this is that actually probiotics can be used in an antibiotic type of implication. And it's such a trip. It's like such a concept that, oh my God, because, you know, this is how our society thinks. This is based upon a very, very, I don't know. I mean, does somebody in the college world, in the medical world, in biotech, do they understand this concept? Is that why they created these words to begin with? Antibiotics, antibiotic, anti-life. But but we need minerals. I mean, where's my all of this can be made into antibiotics. Okay. Probiotics is basically bacteria, but then there's good bacteria and bad bacteria, but that's relative to how the body receives it. Because even viruses and even bacteria that would be deemed bad could be good on a strong body. Why is it bad bacteria? Because it's relating to a very weak body. See, this is the concepts that are like, how do you explain? I mean, yeah, it's what you bring to the table. So then I have to break it down, say a weak body, strong body. What makes a weak body? What makes a strong body? Well, a weak body is when the body's in pain all the time, and then you're applying the antibiotic and probiotic method to the body to manage the pain. That's what a weak body is. It's what you do to manage the pain. And and believe me, those of you that are in the holistic world and the allopathic world, you're always in pain. And then when you're not in pain, it's because you've taken things to stop the programming, or you're continuously smoking pot and then changing the strains of pot because your body adapts and it wants to heal. So you're in pain again. So then you find a different strain, a stronger marijuana, a stronger CBD oil, a stronger painkiller, a stronger whatever to stop the healing programming. So, and that's the same thing with the probiotics out there. So even though I think it's great that some of you are doing your research and saying, oh, wow, the probiotics are doing therapeutic benefits, but that's no different than taking antibiotics and applying therapeutic qualities to it. Because it's about a chemical process. It's not just compartmentalizing each individual thing and saying, oh, it's great, or you can say, oh, it's evil. I mean, look, so Janie Valentine found articles that said that probiotic strains, I'm not trying to pick on you, but I'm trying to show you guys an example here. So you're seeing that probiotics can be used, and it substantiates too, jade juice, right? So probiotics can be used by itself as a therapeutic quality for specific diseases out there. But then the debunkers out there, the naysayers, are taking salt by itself and demonizing and applying it to jade juice as if that's what we're just doing, is just pouring salt and shoving salt down people's throats. No, that's not it. There's a whole chemical process that actually, I wrote it down. It's Na plus, and then AQ it's dissolved in water, plus Cl minus, because this is a negative, Cl is a negative, and Na is a positive, and AQ is aqueous, so it dissolves in water, plus then the lactofermentation over cabbage. So there's a whole chemical process here. This is basically the lactofermented jade juice. And this is a chemical process. And this is what then matches the elemental composition of the human body, because you're using pink salt that has the trace minerals. Though in this specific equation, it is sodium chloride plus then lactofermentation over then the macro and micronutrients of cabbage. What are macro and micronutrients? Well, it's a combination of proteins and vitamins and minerals, the building blocks of tissue in the human body, okay? But you can always isolate the components of jade juice and find either therapeutic qualities or deadly qualities if it's used by itself. So we have to try not to play the game of compartmentalizing each individual ingredient, and understand the chemical process and understand the intent, what it's being used for. Because even a probiotic can be used in an antibiotic implication to interrupt the programming, So when somebody has symptoms, there's a reason why the body's going through its processes to try to correct the issue. And then you're bringing in a bacteria just by itself, not with a chemical process, but you bring in a bacteria to go and manipulate that specific process to stop that programming. That's antibiotic. That's an antibiotic quality using a probiotic. Okay? It boggles the mind. So anti-life is when you're actually intending to stop life from happening, even if you're using life. It's like a mercenary. You're taking a bacteria that could be good in a chemical process, and you are doing things to the body that's not really helping the body. I mean, yeah, it gives somebody a stay of execution, okay. But that's no different than taking chemotherapy on a body that is still early on in the diagnosis process. Yeah, they'll have a remission. They're going to reverse their issue. They'll go, they'll have a lowered cancer count when you apply chemotherapy or when you apply cannabis or some probiotic. It's all the same stuff, because really in of itself, chemotherapy and cannabis in trace amounts isn't bad. It's how it's being applied was what makes it antibiotic, because you're intending to stop the healing process. So that's a major concept that it just hit me the last couple of days when I actually was trying to write these damn formulas. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to write a formula to J juice. Well, I already did. Well, yeah, I did last night. But I'm trying to now, what I'm trying to do now is create an equation or something that would be so simple. So this is the J juice. Right here is the J juice, I guess. Okay. And maybe one day I'll find some scientist that would then can tell me if this makes sense, because I have no idea. I'm just applying stuff and thinking in my head logically what all this means. But I have to understand, well, what does it mean when you have the salt and then the lactofermentation over cabbage? Why don't I just do Na plus Cl with the AQ, which is aqueous, which means it's being dissolved, plus then the lactofermentation, plus then the cabbage. But maybe the cabbage is a base point, but then what are we dividing? Well, let's say if I want to add value, if I want to actually create value, okay, 50, for salt and 50 for lactofermentation and 100 for cabbage, it's all one. I guess you can create any kind of outcome and any kind of perception, even using numbers. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say here, because it's still the same thing as a sentence, Jilly juice is amazing. But I'm also, then I got to take the human body, which this is the human body. Okay. And this has, the electrolytes, the potassium, sulfur, sodium, and has like 2%, of the sodium and chlorine, and then, which is Cl. And then you have like the 1% trace minerals, okay, and that's in the salt. And then you have the other trace minerals, and then you have then there's obviously the lactofermentation that you need to have, or you need to have the gut bacteria, the bacteria, okay. And then you see also water and oxygen and protein and carbs and sugars, or carbs and fat is also making up. So I have to like go through and put percentages over 100 or over the human body. Okay, so it's 2%. So oxygen is 65% over the human body, which is 100%. Carbon is 18%, over the human body, which is 100%. Hydrogen. And then I go and as far as the J juice, well, if you even tested J juice in a lab, as far as the nutrient content, it's always going to fluctuate based upon just it's not always going to be the same. Okay, but when you look at the actual breakdown of cabbage and kale, it does tell you it has 14% this and 50% this and this and this. So you can, you can look at it that way too, and break it down and then do the comparison to the human body, and then the macro and micronutrients of the cabbage and kale and the salt and the lactofermentation, and then you'll see they're exactly very, very similar. And then you also have the food supply you get all the fats, okay? Because your body has to have 16% fat. Your body has to have 6% minerals, and then 62% water, 16% protein, which is all the macro and micronutrients. Okay, so you have that in the cabbage. So that's what it is. That's what protein is macro and micronutrients. So, and then I think I read or I wrote somewhere, I think I posted that, and I knew that legumes would not be something that I want anybody on my protocol to do. Like, and I didn't even know this, but I knew that the vegans and vegetarians out there are just as unhealthy as the carnivores who are not taking care of themselves too. And so when I said no legumes on the protocol, I knew that peanut butter and all of like the peas and all the bean stuff, too much of that, no. And then it got confirmed when I looked up the health issues of vegan and vegetarians, and their diet is mostly legumes, and it creates leaky gut. So I think I knew a long time ago that the vegan and vegetarian world was just as unhealthy as the world out there that was eating meat on a very weak body. But now legumes and meat on a strong body, not a big deal. But if you are just a vegetarian and you're most of your diet and you're only doing like a little bit of J juice, I know some of you haven't taken on the J juice, but you're vegan and vegetarians and you're eating massive amounts of beans and legumes and peanut butter and all this stuff, you're going to cause leaky gut. Okay, so if you really love your legumes, okay, fine. Try to give them up for a little bit on the J juice, heal and seal, and then have them in moderation. Okay, so that's why I posted that, not to slam the vegans and vegetarians, but to understand that I think innately I knew that legumes was not going to be a good thing for people on a continuous basis, especially those that just adopt vegan and vegetarian. So yeah, this is some pretty heavy information when it comes to probiotics and antibiotics. So even probiotics can have an antibiotic implication, as antibiotic is already implied when used in a methodology. Yeah, because there's nothing that's anti-life. It's only anti-life on a body that's imbalanced. So that's why it's so that's why with this logic stuff, with these symbols, you know, where they have where things like if and only if. Now here's that's right. Here's this. So this is what I'm working on last night. Okay. So what is death? This is where I have to figure out, am I making sense here? So death is if and only if, parentheses, antibiotics, the same thing that's basically relatively equal to probiotics because it's how it's being used, okay? Plus then the human body to the power of infinite viruses, because you're always going to be exposed to viruses. And then close parentheses, and then I have productivity divided by energy, okay, over a weak body. So your weak body is creating some productivity and energy, and you're applying the antibiotic and probiotic method on a body, on a human body that's full of viruses. It's going to have, on a weak body, it's going to equal death, because a weak body is not going to be able to handle the virus program, the infinite virus programming that you're always exposed to. Okay, and then on a life, okay, is if and only if, and these are like statistical logic symbols that I'm studying, trying to figure out, does this make sense? Am I applying this the right way? I mean, that's exactly, I'm just kind of shooting in the dark. So some statistician or some mathematician that's looking at going like, what the hell is she doing? Hey, I'm attempting shooting in the dark because I haven't studied this. So I'm just trying to figure out how can I speak in these kind of formulas and convey a thing. Maybe somebody will help me down the road. I don't know. So then you have parentheses, the human body to the infinite power of viruses, which viruses, to the power of viruses infinitely, plus jelly juice to the infinite power, because jelly juice will always be in a life-giving world, okay? Because you cannot get away from jelly juice. And then plus then productivity divided by energy over a strong body equals life. So the difference is really is the J juice, which is a chemical process with probiotics, salt, and macro and micronutrients, to then the antibiotic and probiotic method, where you're just isolating antibiotics and probiotics on a human body that's weak, that's giving out some kind of energy. But really, when you think about it, it's not enough, and that's why you have death. Okay? So, yeah. That's really what I'm saying. And then, so I don't know. I'm probably not going to put that in the book because it's probably not correct, but it might be. I don't know. Maybe one day, maybe I'll find somebody. But that's essentially, I'll think about it more and I'll study more and find other examples that have similar characteristics of what I'm saying to see if, because I learned just how to even write out water plus H2O. Yeah, you can do NaCl plus H2O, but then if the water is left out and the salt water is left out, and the water dissolves, then you have the salt again. So when I looked up on YouTube, how do you write out an equation or a chemical equation for dissolving salt and water together? It's Na with a plus sign because it's a positive compound, and then parentheses AQ for aqueous, and then plus Cl, which is minus, which is it's negative. Okay, and that's chlorine or chloride, and then close parentheses AQ or open parentheses close parentheses AQ because it's being dissolved in water, plus then I added the chemical composition for lactofermentation, then over cabbage, which is macro and micronutrients. Okay, so macro micronutrients houses vitamins, minerals, and protein. But protein is also a macro micronutrients. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so proteins, and then yeah, so vitamins and minerals and protein, which is macro micronutrients. That's what cabbage is. And that's what the body needs. It needs protein. It needs macro micronutrients. It needs trace minerals, which is the sodium. It needs carbohydrates. It needs fat. It needs minerals. Yeah. Oxygen, water. Okay. So it's so close to the J juice. That's why it's so aligned. So anyways, I don't know. This is just, I mean, I do know, but how to write the stuff in, I don't know. That's what I'm, and why do it? I don't know. Just because it's fun, it's challenging. How do I know if I'm writing it correctly? Well, I don't know. But anyways, but I wanted you guys to see the difference and understand about probiotics can be used antibiotically. Okay. Because I'll tell you what, when you're utilizing yogurt and sugar and fruit and vinegar as a way to ferment your food, you're actually causing an imbalance. I'll tell you why. Because the yogurt has the sugars, milk, right? You have the vinegar has a fermented ethanol, so it's carcinogenic. The sugar is sugar, like fruit sugar. You can even, like, I guess even tea, but tea has its own antibiotic qualities to it. And so when you put those together and you already have a candida imbalance and you're taking in mass amounts of coconut sugar, mass amounts of fruit sugar, you know, mass amounts of apple cider vinegar, which has vinegar and then apples in the fruit, and then you're getting lactobacillus. So you're having a high dosage of lactic acid, which is going to make your muscles and your body just go into this yucky type of chemical process that's going to attract pestilence. You're basically poisoning your body because you're bringing it down a death trajectory. Okay, and then you have a candida imbalance. The sugars feed the candida. So you're eating mass amounts of yogurt and kombuchas and apple cider vinegars. Not only are you feeding the candida and causing more of an imbalance, but you're also making, you know, you're creating more lactic acid in your body that is going to then cause you to be attractive to pestilence and then go on that death trajectory. Okay, so, you know, just because it has short-term therapeutic qualities doesn't mean that it's good for you. Just because you're taking probiotic strains and applying it to people's diseases doesn't mean it actually is overall good for you, because you can always isolate every single mineral out there and it will be a therapeutic quality. It could be good, and then someone could characterize it to be bad. Oh yeah, there's Jillian shoving straight up salt down babies' throats. That's what Jillian's, that's how they're characterizing J juice, is just straight up salt and that's it. Those are the simple minds that don't understand chemistry and the chemical process. And so this is where now we got to bring in a bit more intelligent thought to understand chemistry and chemical processes, and why it is I'm like, no to kombucha and apple cider vinegar and the kefir yogurts and the kefir water grains and all that stuff. Because that chemical process, even though it houses probiotics, it's still detrimental to a body that's already weak and imbalanced. Antibiotics is based upon how it's being applied and who it's being applied to. So if your kid is sick and you're applying them with freaking elderberry syrup, you're giving them so many minerals, it's causing an imbalance, plus all this sugar feeds their candida. And then it then sustains the same programming that of why, you know, that was the reason why it is you're giving them the stuff to begin with. And you're leaving them open for other stuff to then cause more issues in programming. Okay, so really, truly, if you want to change the programming in your children as well as yourself, you would apply the right data that is so aligned with the body, because the body has a very specific formula, and the J juice is very much aligned with the body's formula. Okay, and then with the diet and the food supply. And that's why this is so revolutionary, is because of the chemical equation. So journalists out there, they're very good at stringing words together, but they're not chemists, they're not mathematicians. All they're good at is painting you a picture that doesn't really exist, because they're not applying the scientific method to it. They're just isolating specific ingredients and specific minerals and then demonizing it. No different than take somebody saying, okay, probiotics can be very therapeutic. Yes. And salt could be very therapeutic too. So salt could be a demon, salt could be therapeutic. Probiotics could be a demon, probiotics can be therapeutic. It's a wash. So now it's about chemistry. Okay, good can be evil, evil can be good based upon what it's being applied to. There is no really good and evil. It's just how it manifests, and then we as humans have to put some kind of judgment on it to call something good and evil. There is no good and evil in the world. It's just how the body manifests itself in the process of its life or death trajectory. And then we deem actions as evil because it's part of what we deem as there are laws and boundaries that you cannot cross in our society. And so if you cross a law or cross a boundary, then yes, that would be deemed as evil and bad. Okay, but then that's based upon that's based on the perception of society of what we've deemed as illegal, and then also too, a person manifesting these characteristics of criminal activity, well, they have a major imbalance, and yeah, it breaks the law too. So right now you're seeing that legislation is saying that, okay, you know, certain disorders are not criminal that victimize minors. Well, you can have a disorder and also be a criminal. They should not be mutually exclusive. Okay? Because even though, you know, when I was angry at the world and I hated not having a job or something, I didn't go out and steal and justify it. Okay? Now, some people do, and they justify it. Now, is that a disorder? But I mean, we could say that every single person that's a criminal has some kind of disorder, which they do. But it's not going to be a get out of jail for free card because you have a disorder that caused you to commit a crime. People stole my book and they put it out there on the internet, posted it in their articles. That is a disorder when you knowingly went and victimized somebody else. Okay? That's a disorder of criminal activity. That then translate into the activists that justify why they, see, that's what I'm saying. It's a disorder, but could it be necessarily a crime? Well, I guess if I wanted to press charges, I could. But is it worth it? No, it's not worth it. Okay? So it's one of those things that we have to understand that, yes, some people knowingly done things and they have disorders, and we can hold them accountable if it's that much of a crime, if it's really that much of a victim of a crime, if there's so many victims to that crime. So it's just that whole thing of, okay, we got to understand and find ways to protect ourselves from those criminals in our society. Because we have a lot of criminals in our society that will justify their criminal activity because of their imbalances. And so knowing this, you got to then take the proper measures out there to protect yourself from those criminals in society. Okay? So anyways, yeah, so there's really no good and evil. It's just levels of imbalances that manifest in appropriate behavior or inappropriate behavior based upon what we deem is lawful or unlawful. And that's why we have lawyers in the court system. Okay, so anyways, just understand these concepts, and hopefully Kevin understands. I think Kevin understands this. I'm sure. I'll see when he writes this stuff out. But anyways, you guys have a good day. I'm going to do my stuff. I'm going to think about this whole math thing and the equations, and this makes my brain hurt. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening. Bye.